Everyone loves to gather around the conference table and brainstorm new ideas. We all enjoy exploring the possibility of what we could do, what it might look like, and of course the big success that we think could result from our innovative ideas. But how often does ideating actually lead to the execution of a project? And how many times have we seen the high energy experienced during the idea phase quickly run out of gas or get lost in the woods when it comes time to take action, or more importantly, taking consistent action that will bring a concept into fruition? I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table, where we get to hear from some of the world's most interesting thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators. They share insights, experience, and expertise that can help us achieve greater success in business and in personal development. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, I'm speaking with Natalie Turner, founder and CEO of the Entheo network, which helps companies build innovation systems, culture, and capabilities. She is also the inventor of the 6 Eyes, a model that helps people measure their innovation strengths so that they can achieve greater impact from their new ideas. In this podcast, Natalie talks about how to create a more innovative, results-oriented culture, the 6 Eyes of innovation and how leaders can use them in their businesses, the mindsets and skills we need to harness diversity, and the different dimensions of innovation and how leaders can identify them and use them to build better results in their companies. Before we get started, if you have ever wondered how you could get to be a guest on a podcast, then you might want to take a look at the Ultimate Podcast Authority, a new course that teaches everything you need to know to land those coveted spots on podcasts that will help you gain visibility and grow your authority. You can find out more about this course over on our podcast website at seatpodcast.com. That's seatpodcast.com. Now let's sit down with Natalie and learn how to turn our ideas into action plans that lead to measurable results. Natalie, I'm so glad that you can join us on A Seat at the Table. You're coming at leadership from an interesting angle, because there's been a lot of talk about leadership. These are very challenging times for people who are running businesses, whether it be a huge multinational, whether it be a smaller local business. Everybody is facing that pressure of not only the economic challenges, but also there's a lot more unrest amongst people who are on our teams. And then we still need to compete and come up with things that are innovative, be able to provide things that our customers want as well. So, from your experience, how do you create a more innovative, more results-oriented culture?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of, really thinking about, how leadership is evolving. So I talk a lot about innovation leadership itself. Right. So if we think about people leading innovation, leaders leading innovation, and that can mean a number of different things. Obviously, the first thing that will come to mind when people think of the word innovation is big step change, massive technological disruption or digitalization, and things that are going on maybe in the past were sort of seen to be more things in the future. Whereas they're now sort of in our closer peripheral vision. So we have to lead in those spaces of big change that are going on. But we've also got to be leading in those closer horizons, if you like. The things, the day-to-day work, keeping the lights on, keeping in business, keeping people engaged in their day-to-day work. So thinking about innovation leadership across a scale means that you then need to think, well, if I'm going to lead sort of big step change as well as day to day, then we need different ways to manage that process itself and not just sort of leave it up to chance or, hoping that somebody somewhere in the organization, whether it's in leadership or elsewhere, will come up with the next great big idea, but to really think through what is your innovation strategy. How is innovation leading your strategy, or how is it enabling it? And both, because they're both required. And to be thinking about, your throughput of ideas. Do you actually have a way to have a process, in a sense, to enable your idea flow to go through that journey that it needs to go through? I think a lot of the time what happens is that People have an idea, or they go off on a workshop, or they have a strategic retreat and they generate loads of ideas. They don't really then think through, what type of ideas are there? How have they got all the capability to build them or create them? And they don't necessarily have a way to manage them. So a lot of these ideas just get lost all the time. So I think really thinking through culture building across a number of different spheres is very important from a leadership perspective. Not just sort of that creative ideation stage, but that whole management of the idea process itself.
I think that's so important because oftentimes people come up with tons of ideas, and it's fun to come up with ideas, right? It's fun to brainstorm. The hard work is when you actually have to execute on them and bring them to fruition. And like you said, that's often where the train jumps the track and you end up with just lots of random ideas that never get anywhere. So I think that's really important that you brought that up. Now, you said that you have invented something that you call the 6 Eyes of innovation. Can you explain what they are? I mean, how can people in leadership positions apply this to the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened really, if I just give a little bit of context to my own story of why I invented it, so I think that'll be interesting for people and yourself as well. Just prior to setting up a business back in 2006, I'd had a number of roles as an innovation director in the corporate world, as an interim manager in sort of startups, helping to grow startups, as an entrepreneur in startups as well. So I'd done a number of different roles that had sort of innovation at the core, if you like. And the job just prior to setting up the Entheo network back in 2006 in London, I was an innovation director in a large research firm, market research firm. So I was responsible for that early stage innovation, if you like, understanding customer needs, design thinking, brainstorming, creative ideation, having these massive workshops with, creative consumers and the client and everyone, coming up with fantastic solutions and new concepts, new propositions for their organizations. And they were always great. These events and these interventions never failed to produce very imaginative, creative solutions that were designed on people's needs. But what happened was, what I started to notice, and I came from a commercial marketing strategy background. I wasn't in the leadership or organizational development sphere. I was more in that commercial area. Was that these ideas went back into the respective organizations, and a lot of them got lost. A lot of them maybe were tinkered around a little bit, and then, they may have gone into the market, but a lot of their novelty was reduced. So the actual innovativeness of the idea, after it had been sort of researched to death maybe, was lost. Or there just seemed to be a big gap. And some companies were good at managing innovation and others weren't. And so that sort of got me thinking, why is this happening? What is it? What's the reason that our ideas don't even get off the track sometimes, off the starting point? And particularly when they're good ideas. So I actually left the corporate world and set up a company to focus not just on what to innovate, but how to innovate and why to innovate, really. So I didn't really know at that time that I was stepping into the world of organizational development, leadership, management, people, because a lot of the reasons are to do with those areas. They're not necessarily to do with the ideas themselves. So I went in search of models and systems and, tools, if you like, to start working with companies. And I couldn't find things that would really encompass the complexity in a simple way. There were a lot of those funnels, the funnel type management of innovation where loads of ideas and then take it through, converge and pop out comes an innovation. Well, most of the time it isn't like that in the real world. And also, it's okay if you're, say, doing a product development, or R&D type led innovation. But what about if you're in sales or marketing or in the HR department or in finance? What about you? So this got me sort of thinking more about human-centered innovation. And that's really what sparked the development of the model which I created called the 6 Eyes of innovation.
So give me an example, if you can, of how you would bring that through in the workplace.
Okay. Well, let me take you through what the model is composed of, and then we can explore that. So basically, it's a circular model. So it's what I call an iterative model, not a linear model. So that that means, like our brains, we bounce, don't we? We bounce around. We come up with an idea, or we may investigate it, and then maybe we'll go back, realize the idea didn't work. So our minds shift all the time. So I wanted to create a dynamic model that would reflect the thinking process, as well as a model that would help people manage innovation. So we've got 6 different eyes. They're all circles. They're all of an equal weight. And that's really important. We've got identify, which is all about identifying your opportunity, or trying to understand what the problem is you're trying to solve. Understanding your customers' needs, understanding what's changing in your world, your marketplace. It could all be different things, but it's all about looking out, looking out into the world. And I give it the color blue, because that blue ocean, blue sky thinking, that type of thinking. Then we have ignite. And ignite is red, so I give it the color red. It's another circle, obviously. And it's all about that enthusiasm, the passion for the new idea, the ignition of the solution, lateral thinking, creative thinking. So that's when we come up with ideas, which is obviously very, very important, because without it, we don't have innovation, because we just have business as usual. But it's only one stage of the journey, the ignition stage. It's interesting, I think even today, when you say a culture of innovation to people, they mostly think that piece, that piece of ignite is what we need. But actually, you need all of the 6 to make a culture work. So then we've got investigate. And investigate, I give the color teal blue. It's more of an objective, cooler stage of innovation. It's when we test, we prototype, we research our ideas. We want to see whether they're going to work or not. So you need very different skill sets there and different processes to manage that phase of innovation. Then we have invest. I give the color green. We often associate green with money, with growth, say sustainability. And invest is when we decide, yes, I'm going to do it, or no, not going to do it, or maybe I'm going to do it. But you make a decision and you put the resources in that you need to support that idea through its journey. I often call that phase the graveyard of ideas. This is where ideas go to die. And going back to my story, that is often where they were dying. Everyone's dancing around identify, ignite, and investigate and having a merry time. But where's the investment? Where's the money? Where's the time? Where's the resources to enable the idea to move from an idea into an innovation? So true. So then we have implement, and implement I give the color purple. Purple is historically the hardest color to make, and this is the hard work. This is where we make the idea real. We start to create that value. This is where we really start to innovate, because we're bringing to life something that wasn't formerly there. And then we have improve. And improve, I give the color orange, and improve is all around leverage, optimization, learning. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the end. That's why it's in a circle. You can jump over to improve from ignite or from investigate or wherever. But it's that mindset and that stage of how can I do what I'm doing better or differently? And then in the middle, and this is really important, so it's what, how, and why, is purpose. Why are we trying to do what we're trying to do in the first place? What is it? What is the value we're trying to create? And why are we trying to do this? It's an alignment, a space for alignment, particularly in working with teams. So in terms of how you work with this in a business is always start with purpose. What are you trying to do and why? Whether that's for you as an individual or as a team working together, or even as an organization, then you move to identify, to understand, well, where are you looking? What's changing? And from my experience, a lot of companies don't spend enough time in the identify stage. They jump into Ignite to come up with some solutions. They haven't really thought through why or where. And then they spend all this time trying to generate new ideas. And then they'll probably hop into implement, maybe, right. Misinvestigate, because they just want to get on with it.
Right.
And so it enables you to start thinking, where am I? Where are my ideas? Because they're going to be at different stages of that journey. Yes. And then the last point is there's two little triangles that link each of the circles of the 6 eyes to purpose. And the inner triangle represents culture and the outer one process. So this is about really building the capability of your team, of your organization to innovate across each of the 6 stages.
I think that's really an interesting way to look at it. I like the fact that you've assigned colors to it also, but I think the fact that you really point up the importance of linking the teams to the ideas and from the get-go understanding that you have to be thinking through to the end, as opposed to, like you're saying, just get caught up in the thinking and dreaming and planning and then, you're facing a failure to launch, so to speak. So yeah. I like the way that you've brought that up. Now, based on your work, what are the mindsets and skills that we need to harness diversity?
Absolutely. So what happened in the whole story, actually, is that, first of all, I created this model. But then it was like, how do we think about this from a people perspective in terms of not just the process of innovation, but the types of people that innovate? And innovative people, again, going back to, I think, a myth that we must bust, they're not just the igniters. They're not just the people that come up with the ideas. All of these eyes represent a type, if you like, or a mixture of skills that we need to make our ideas happen. So what we did was we created a questionnaire, a profiling instrument, back in 2009 to measure 36 discrete skills across each of the eyes. So there's 6 in each eye. And they're very different skills. So, for Ignite, one would be, I'm the first to come up with new ideas. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How true is that of you? So it's a skills assessment. It's not a psychological tool. It's not a motivational tool. It's not a personality test. It's what do you think about yourself as it relates to skills, discrete ways of being able to do something. How good do you think you are at it? And also, how important is it to your job right now? Because some things might not be important. Some things might be really important. So you get a gap analysis between what you think your skill set is across each of the eyes and also what's important to you. And the other aspect that I created within it was mindset. So you ask about mindset, and mindset is so, so important because it's not just about our ability to do something. It's about how we think, our orientation of mind, and how it needs to be different depending on what we're trying to do at the stage where the idea is.
Absolutely.
So for identify, I give the mindset of curiosity, open-mindedness. And you can actually look on the website and you can see all of these. But I created swirls. I wanted like a picture to represent a mindset. And I was walking actually along the beach in Wollongong. I was an innovation consultant for a company in Australia for a few months, a number of years ago. And I was thinking, how can I represent a mindset? It's such a difficult, intangible thing. It's a bit like a cloud, you go to touch a cloud and your fingers disappear, a mindset. So I came up with this idea with the designer to create these swirls of energy. And so for curiosity, the swirls are like spinning outwards, because it's openness, open-mindedness. Then you've got creativity for Ignite, critical thinking or critical mindset for investigate, very different from curiosity and creativity. Courage, we need courage in invest, and often we lack it, particularly doing new stuff. That's why we don't do it. Courage. And then we have commitment for implementation. And we have being clever, the clever mindset, the ability to see how something can be done differently in a fast way or improve. So going back to people and leadership and managing innovation, part of the role of being a leader of innovation is understand your people, understand your strengths, understand the different types of people you have in your team, and then harness their diversity of thought and skill set and experience to enable a better outcome when it comes to results.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think that, as I've said before, I like the way that you really think things through to the end and understand what you need to do to work with all these different moving parts and bring it all together so that you actually end up with something that's workable. Now, you said that there are different dimensions of innovation, which I think is interesting. What are they? I mean, how can leaders identify them? How can we use them to build better results in our companies? We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Yeah, so with the dimensions, we have like these 6 different eyes. But it's about, I think, if we can understand and identify them in ourselves. So first, as a leader, to have a really clear view of what's the dimensions of your own skill set, if you like. So think about it. If you're an igniting leader and you come up high on Ignite on the profile, you identify with that skill set, you're going to lead from a certain perspective. You're going to lead from a vantage point of idea generation. That's how you see the world. That's what you come up with. You're sparking ideas. You're throwing them out to your team. Everyone's buzzing around you. And you can be infuriating as well, because here they come again with another idea, If you're an implementation type of leader, that's your strength, that's your strong point, then you're going to see innovation through that vantage point, through that perspective about getting things done, execution, delivery, results orientation. And that's great when you need it, but if you don't have any Ignite coming in, you're not going to have any freshness. And if you haven't got any implementation, you're not going to have any traction, So I think understanding these dimensions in yourself as a leader is really, really important, because then what you have to do is you have to be like in the helicopter. You've got to go above yourself and think and say, okay, I'm an igniting leader, but my team needs to be looking at all these dimensions together. So I need to rein in the Ignite sometimes and get them to focus on implement or focus on the invest stage or whatever might be needed to make the idea work. So that's what I think with regards to the dimensions is to really start to actively play with them in your own mind. Think of it being like a painter, with a palette of all the different colors. And you think, okay, well, what does the idea need to move forward? And who am I either in the team contributing or who am I leading to enable this to happen?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you look at who are the leaders and what are their strengths. So you're implementing this system, but at the same time, you're trying to adapt it to the personalities of the different team leaders, right? Because when you come into a company, you have certain people in place in different roles. So you have to be able to play to their strengths, so to speak, while also working your system. So I think it's a really interesting way to look at it. I really haven't had anybody else look at it from that point of view.
And it gives data. I think that's what's really important these days.
Yes.
Is to have a data point where you have a mirror back on yourself. It's not an absolute truth. It's your perception of you. Yeah. So it's a self-perception, but we can then aggregate data and create team reports and team profiles and then present them back to teams and say, okay, you as a team consider yourselves to be really strong on investigate, but there's nobody in the team that considers themselves to be strong on invest. So how's that playing out in the way that you work together, So you start a dialogue. You get people thinking about how they work, how they think, how they collaborate together to make their ideas work. So I think that's really what can be very, very useful, is to hold the mirror. Hold the mirror up to people, allow that discussion, and then say, what's important to you? What processes do you need to get in place? What cultural things do you need to reinforce to allow innovation to flourish across each of the 6 I's and each of those dimensions?
Yeah, very important points. And it's a good mental exercise for anyone in leadership to look at it from that point of view, because it's not the way we typically look at things. And I think by forcing yourself to look at it from that point of view, right, from that perspective, it shines a light on things that you hadn't thought about. It forces you to go beyond, we all fall into that trap, right, of just making assumptions. So we come to the table with certain things, and until you sort of move around the table and look at something from different perspectives, some of the things that you've assumed, well, we have to do it this way, or, well, this is a given. Well, maybe it's not. So I like the fact that you've created this framework that enables people to sort of challenge their way of looking at things, their way of doing it, and provides this roadmap that they can create their own path, but that leads to success. So you have enough flexibility in there, right, that companies can adapt it to their products, to their needs, to their personalities. Absolutely. But it does take you on that ultimate journey to actual results.
Yeah. And always coming back to that, to purpose as well. You're talking about alignment and seeing from different perspectives, to come back to say, are we on track? Are we on track to the purpose that we've set ourselves, whether it's an organizational purpose or a project purpose or a team purpose, but to really look at that and say, because that alone is so powerful. I've had such powerful discussions with leadership teams just around purpose, because everyone's got different views, and then they're like, oh, right, well, I didn't see it that way. Well, no, I don't think we're doing that, and it gets people to have that discussion again, to really look at why are they doing what they're doing, particularly from a leadership perspective, is not just tell people, go and be innovative, but help people be innovative by understanding what it means to them, what it means to them in their job, what it means to them in their role, and what type of strengths they have, and then build skills, build discrete skills and give them an opportunity to really explore the different mindsets of innovation.
I think that's really such an important way to look at things. And I thank you so much for sharing such interesting views, Natalie. Where can people get in touch with you? How can we find you?
So I wrote the book back in 2018, and really to codify the 6 I's. And it's very practical. How to try this, do this. Want to build a creative mindset? Try this. So it's very much a how-to book. And I did that because there's lots of theory books on innovation in the world. I wanted to create something really practical.
Where do we find the book?
It's the book you can buy on Amazon. It's published by Pearson, so any book reseller will sell that. Okay. And actually, the book, what I did when I created it, I created a free profile. So as part of the purchase of the book, you can go onto the website, show your proof of purchase, and then do a book report, which gives you your innovation strengths on the 6 I's. So wonderful. People are interested in that. And then the main site for the 6 I's is 6-i-innovation.com. And on there you can find out all about the 6 I's, what makes it different and how can it help you. And we have all our different services that we have created. I mean, part of what we're really trying to do, our purpose, if you like, is to really put this in more people's hands so that they can enable more innovation, more effective innovation outcomes. and really harness the diversity of different people. So do have a look on there. We do certification programs and different training programs, etc. So get in touch. And then, yeah, you can also connect with me personally on LinkedIn. I'm there.
Okay.
And I have a speaker site, which is natalie-turner.net.
Okay, well, I'm going to put all of the links in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your ideas and for everything that you've brought to the table today.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you, Jane.
Oh, my pleasure, Natalie. Thank you for tuning in to A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I'd love to hear about it. Your feedback powers this show. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. And check out our podcast website at seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. You'll find all kinds of bonus content there, including free ebooks, cheat sheets, and a preview of upcoming podcast episodes. And while you're there, take a look at the Ultimate Podcast Authority course. It teaches you exactly what you need to do to land those prestigious guest spots on podcasts. Being a podcast guest is a great way to gain visibility and grow your authority. The Ultimate Podcast Authority course gives you a detailed roadmap with templates to teach you exactly how to achieve this. So head on over to seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. There's a form there for contacting us, so if there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me today and for supporting the show. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next episode of A Seat at the Table.